Today I'm heading to the War Memorial of Korea. The War Memorial of Korea is a museum in Seoul that honors those who have served and died in Korean wars, especially the Korean War. It displays military history, artifacts, and memorials to educate visitors about Korea's conflicts and sacrifices. But before we get into that, I need coffee. Today I'm at Compost Coffee. It's not somewhere I go often because there isn't one near where I stay, but it was on the way to the museum, so I thought, why not? Even though you can't take drinks into the museum, we still had a bit of walking to do before getting there, so obviously I needed a little pick-me-up. I went for an iced hazelnut latte. Normally I'd get an iced Americano, it's my default, but today I was in the mood for something sweet. You can get sweetened Americano, but I've never tried an iced hazelnut latte from Compost before, so it felt like a little adventure in itself. And honestly, one thing I love about Korea is the size of the coffees. Like in England, this would probably be a large, but here is kind of the standard size. As a caffeine addict, this is perfect because it keeps me going for the day without having to run for a second cup. Now let's head out. So, the War Memorial of Korea used to be the headquarters of the Korean army, which already adds this layer of meaning before you even walk in. And outside, before you even get to the exhibitions, there's this massive open area filled with military equipment, aircraft, artillery, most of them from the Korean War era, but also from later periods. So the museum starts way earlier than most people probably expect. It doesn't begin with the Korean War, it goes all the way back like ancient Korea, early kingdoms, early weapons, early forms of defense. And what's interesting is seeing how warfare wasn't just about fighting, it was about survival in a very literal sense. Korea's geographic position made it incredibly vulnerable. It's right between major powers, China, Japan, and historically influenced by both. So for centuries, it was constantly being pulled into conflicts that weren't entirely its own. You'll see weapons from those early periods, swords, armor, bows, but what stands out isn't just what they used, it's how organized everything already was. Military ranks, strategies, formations. Even back then, there was structure. Then it transitions into the Joseon dynasty, which lasted for over 500 years. And this is where things start to feel more documented, more detailed. You will see and learn about Admiral Lee Sun-shin. He's one of those historical figures who almost doesn't feel real because of how constantly competent he was. Like undefeated in naval battles, designed these armored ships called turtle ships, which were basically early ironclads. And you realize how much of Korea's survival during that period depended on very specific people making very precise decisions. So, walking through, the museum is organized into different sections that covers different periods. It starts with Korea's ancient military history, which is kind of cool because you see the evolution of warfare from traditional armor to modern military strategy. And it's not just objects, it's also stories. You see, Korea's history is full of resilience and ingenuity, and the museum does a really nice job showing that without making it feel like a history textbook. Walking inside, the first thing I notice is how open the space feels. It's quiet but not empty. The lighting is soft but focused on the exhibits, so your eyes naturally go to the objects. And I love that there are little interactive screens tucked in between. Some have maps, some show animations of battles or strategies. As I move through the museum, I keep noticing things that feel like little sparks of curiosity. There's a model of an old fortress, and I spent a few minutes just staring at the miniature walls, imagining soldiers patrolling along the edges. Then you move forward and things get heavier. The 20th century section is a shift because now you're not looking at distant history anymore. This is where things start connecting directly to the modern world. Korea was annexed by Japan in 1910, and the occupation lasted until the end of World War II in 1945. It shows how systematic the operation was. Cultural suppression, forced labor, attempts to erase Korean identity, language, names, traditions. And what stands out here is that resistance wasn't always loud or visible. A lot of it was quiet, preserving language, maintaining traditions, small acts that don't look dramatic but actually are. Everything when a culture is being pressured like that. And then World War II ends, and instead of things stabilizing, it kind of fractures. This is where the Korea War comes in, because this isn't just history here, it's directly connected connected to why Korea is still divided today. So the war starts in 1950, not that long ago, which is kind of crazy to think about. And at that point, Korea had already been split into two, North and South. That split wasn't really meant to be permanent, but then everything escalated really quickly. And you can actually see that in the museum through the maps. Like within a really short time, forces from the North had pushed all the way down the peninsula, and then it shifts again. You see how international forces come in, and suddenly it's not just a local conflict anymore. There's a whole section that shows how the momentum keeps changing. Like one side gains ground, then loses it. It's very back and forth. And there's one moment they highlight, the Incheon landing, which completely changes the direction of the war for a bit. But even that doesn't end things, it just shifts everything again. And then eventually it just stops. Not with a full resolution, just a ceasefire in 1953, which means technically it never officially ended. After that, the museum moves into more modern military history, South Korea rebuilding, developing its military, participating in international missions, and this part feels different, not because it's less important, but because it's about growth and stability after something incredibly chaotic. You see advancements in technology, changes in strategy, the way the military evolved alongside the country's rapid development. There's also a large focus on remembrance. Memorial halls dedicated to soldiers who served, names engraved, spaces that are clearly meant not just to inform, but to honor. I think what makes this museum worth visiting, even if you don't know much about Korean history before coming here, you leave with a pretty solid understanding of how the country became what it is today.